Thank you for coming. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Douglas. I'm the Director of Safety and Security. I retired from Millville Park Police Department at the end of last April, and I began work here on about the exactly on the 1st of May, 7 days later. Yes, my wife questioned my sanity at the time, and with good reason. She's known me for a long time. So what are we going to do tonight? Well, I want to talk a little bit about the security program that we're trying to put in place in the district. I want to give you some information ahead of the bond issue we have requested so that you know what your options are and as far as what you may or may not be voting for or voting otherwise, and answer your questions. So this is a town hall meeting, and we're going to start off with a briefing. I think maybe part of a reason that the new superintendent reached out to a chief of police, knowing that I was going to retire, was the sentiment a year ago of where we were on security. Newtown, Connecticut was a situation which was not quite a year before that, about a year before that. And as a result, and responding to all of the hue and cry from the patrons of this district at that time, I think he sensed and knew, and so did the board, that we had to do something, and we had to do something much different than we had in the past to try to guarantee the safety of our students. Ironically, bringing police executives now into the school district environment is not just something we're doing. Kansas City, Kansas has done that. Salina has done that. Other districts across the country are starting to do that because of the expertise and the body of experience that we bring to the job. So there was a survey. In fact, there were two patron surveys that ask a variety of questions about the district. So out of a response to this survey, what did the district do? Well, prior to my coming here, in fact, probably prior to the current superintendent, and responding to what happened in Newtown, they put into process an upgrade of security at 16 of our schools, one of which is the alternate high school, and 15 others. Now, you're tempted to ask me why those 15. If you have children in a school that was not immediately upgraded, you want to know, like most people, why them and not this one? You know, I wasn't privileged to that, but my guess is, quite frankly and candidly, they were the 15 easiest. And they needed to get something on the table right now. So we could do some things at those schools, and at the same time, because they were the easiest, we could create a pilot program, a beta opportunity, to be able to see what would work and what wouldn't. And so what they did was they went ahead and put in some security features at these schools. I came on board right at the end of April, 1st of May, as I said, and they were just starting to do the work during the summer. And by the time we started school, we were starting with programs that had never been tested before, and I'm suddenly trying to answer questions about a system that I didn't design. But we now have a fairly good handle on how that works and what we need to do with it. In addition, part of my instructions were to evaluate the state of security for the entire district and create a comprehensive security plan. To look throughout the district, which I have done, and try to look at what are the most important things that we need to accomplish to keep the kids safe. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. One of the other things was, once I had completed that, the superintendent was very specific that if we were to need capital improvements, which he sensed that we would and absolutely do, that I make recommendations to him on what those capital improvements should be with justification for how it would work so they could cost it out and make some decisions on whether to recommend that to the board, which we have done. And then one of the most important things was to develop a state-of-the-art emergency operations plan. Now, I'm going to talk to you about what an emergency operations plan is in a little while, and maybe more importantly, what it's not. And the most important thing about an operations plan is it's not one plan. It's many plans wrapped together in an envelope and put together that way. We'll get to that in a minute. So I took a look at the security of the whole district, and I tried to come to some conclusions as to what it was that we needed to do to be able to give to the superintendent recommendation for capital improvements, because security is not the only part of the things that need to be fixed. We have some schools that need to be replaced. and they're certainly not very conducive to security. We have some things at the schools that need to be replaced. The football field, the south football field. Certainly the bleachers and all the things with the structural issues that are there, that needs to be addressed. Cafeterias need to be enlarged, food processing, all kinds of things that really fall outside of my purview but are wrapped together in the recommendations the superintendent has made. But let's go back to security. Doug? One of the first things that they did at these 16 schools was to establish fences around them. And I was taken back a little bit because my first month or so on the job, I had to go down to Oak Park Carpenter and explain to the people who live around there why the fences were necessary, because they were concerned that the park-like atmosphere was going to disappear. Well, it's still very open. And the fences are there. And in fact, fences were there before. You know, not as an extensive a fence, it didn't go all the way down, but for the most part, behind the residences was already a fence. And they asked me, why do we need that? What's causing that? Well, I can tell you this much. A playground is a part of a school. And the most important thing to a police officer or somebody doing these things, and to the military, is you have to establish and control your perimeter. If you can't control your perimeter, all kinds of bad things happen. Because whether we have a fence or we don't, you're not going to be allowed to walk on that property with those children. Now, we've made some changes in our intruder drill to where now, in fact, Jennifer Gill, who is at Oak Park Carpenter, has been very judicious in pulling intruder drills where if somebody comes onto that property while the kids are outside, we will do what's called a reverse evacuation. But the teachers who are supervising the children have whistles. They will blow that whistle 5 times. The kids are trained to immediately come back to the building by the door they came out of, in line, and they're marched right back in school where they can be protected and locked behind that. Which allows us to keep from having any other issues while we've got them there. Now imagine we don't have that fence. And imagine there are kids running all over. And imagine somebody coming into that group. Now the teachers are there, but the teachers have got all they can handle with 35, 45, 50 kids on the playground running around like kids do everywhere, and trying to keep it so they don't wander off, try to keep them so they're secure, try to keep what you've got going on. You got to try it sometime. It's very difficult. The fence adds a measure of security. And by the way, most of the schools in the city already had basic fences. It's really not that big an addition. Yeah. Some of the other features. Remember I told you one of the most important features of security is the ability to control your perimeter. And we put in things to allow access into the school, but in a controlled way so we could control the perimeter. And what happens is, in the schools that we have the 16, you come up, and in order to get in, you buzz the buzzer, and they're actually looking at you through the camera, see who you are, see what you're doing, see if you're like this, or to see if you're coming in because you're carrying their lunch with a I told you to take this with you look on your face. And they let you in. But in case they've made a mistake, you can't get very far past this door without getting into controlled access right here. And now, suddenly, if we've made a mistake and you shouldn't be in there, we can contain you right here while we call the police or something else. If we let you through this door into the office, then you're in the office. And you can't get to the school proper without being vetted and allowed to go through. One of the features we have purchased after very much debate, and I'll talk about it in a minute, is a Raptor system. You will come in, they will swipe your driver's license. They will then compare that information to the skyward information that says, yes, you're the parent, this is so-and-so's mom, this is so-and-so's dad, this is so-and-so's grandparent, and you're supposed to be there. That's the most important part of what all that will do. Later on, if we have to evacuate that school and go to a place that we call a reunification point, the Raptor system will help us make sure we keep track of the kids and get them back to the people who are supposed to. And how important that is. If any of you have gone to Children's Mercies Hospital in the last 5 years, you've had to walk through a security station and swipe your driver's license and get a little sticker that says you're okay to be there. This will be nothing more than that. And you'll be able to go forward with it. So we took all of that stuff into consideration. We had money to buy it at the first of the year. We had 4 separate set-down discussions with the superintendent and numerous ones of us, and we finally came to the conclusion it was my recommendation. The benefits far outweighed anything else, and we ought to do it. And we have placed an order for Vose. The money has been appropriated by the board already. I anticipate that will be in place by the first of the year. We'll be able to do that, add just another measure of security. One of the other features are the camera systems. And I will be painfully blunt. These camera systems we currently have outside the 16 that we have installed right now are antiquated and, for the most part, at different times, not very functional. We are constantly having breakdowns in the old system, and we are not getting out of them what we ought to get out of them. So we need better cameras, and we need the camera system to be replaced. In the schools that have them, we have the ability in the secretary's area to see those hallways. And we'll talk about the high schools in a minute because they are a wholly different breed of cat. But in the elementary schools, we have limited number of hallways and limited doors. And for the most part, it's a pretty secure perimeter. The kids don't prop the doors open to go in and out of elementary school. So in this case, we have the ability to look. And how important is that? The day that I was there, they had a child throw a huge tantrum and try to run out of a school. As a behavior problem, this was not uncommon. This was about an everyday event with him. And he ran to get out of a school or ran for a place to hide in the school. And so the cameras allowed the secretaries and the principal to track where they went and where to look. And we have things in place that if we don't find them within a certain few minutes, we're calling the police to make sure they haven't gotten out of our perimeter or in a position where they can get hurt. I was surprised, and I bet many of you would be surprised, how many runners we have or kids who have self-destructive tendencies or behavioral issues in our school system. The cameras are instrumental in being able to handle that. And around the table we have a couple principals who are shaking their heads because they have this trouble every single day. So the cameras are a huge, big part. And we'll talk again about high schools in just a few minutes. Now this looks like a small thing, but actually it's a great big thing. In the 16 schools, the door mechanisms have been changed out so that the teachers can do what all of us do when we go to the restroom, and that is lock the door from the inside. Why is that a big deal? If you've ever been in a serious situation where the boogeyman was at the door or in the hallway, the last thing you want to do is to go outside and take your key, which you're not sure you have, and lock the door and then go back inside. And that's what we have to do in some of our schools. And that is not particularly safe. Okay. So, one of the other things outside the physical security of the buildings was the creation of an emergency operations plan. And I told you I would tell you more about it. An emergency operations plan is a plan of plans. And ours is a big one. The emergency operations plan covers every eventuality we can think of. Everything from how do we handle a lockdown to how do we deal with a pandemic. In fact, we've been working on the pandemic plan. In the area under general threats is the area for pandemic. The pandemic planning that we have done so far is about 35 pages, identifying the common pandemic or epidemic things that would occur in a school district, citing research, looking at hyperlinks to take us to detail all that information so our administrators will have it at their fingertips if we have to get in one of these. It has all kinds of information you might not know. Now, not only do we have pandemics, we have all kinds of other things in that plan. We have things like, how do we deal with intruders? That's in there. How do we deal with lockdowns? How do we deal with protest. How do we deal with about 21 different things are in the general analysis section. And in that section, we have developed an app to go on the iPads, which are like the old-fashioned checklists. If this happens, these are the things you need to do. And we're just now starting to roll that out to the principals and the teachers. But the teachers will have it in their hand instead of the old flip charts behind them. They'll have it right on their iPad where they can touch that, boom, it brings up the list, and off they go. And then we come down to the threat analysis. And in the threat analysis, every single school, now I'm going to terrify the teachers, watch out, or the principals, watch closely as their faces turn ashen. In those areas, for every single school, is a form that came from the Adjutant General's office, which is the best analysis of risk for a school that I've ever seen. Unfortunately, it's 44 pages long of questions to answer, yes or no, but there's still 44 pages of them. Once we have all that data collected, we'll be able to vet it and look at common areas and try to work on areas where we feel we're somewhat weak and be able to look through that. In our plan, we have all the refuge areas. You probably don't know, but last summer, one of the architects for the district, who is a structural engineer, went to every single school and identified refuge areas that are the best place to go in a tornado. The safest place that we have to go, which really beats us walking down the hallway and go, well, this is where I'd hide over here. Structurally, they've looked at where to put them. We have in there maps of the schools that we can use to see where everybody's, might go in that area. And we go from that direction. So this is a very all-inclusive plan with lots and lots of information that helps us manage and deal with any circumstance that comes up. And it is radically different than what schools have had in the past. And that's not an indictment of this district. This district was like everybody else. We had a certain set level of those kinds of things, and this far exceeds it. But it exceeds it because the paradigm has changed. And we need that kind of information available in the world we live in. Remember I told you about the app? This is what it looks like. Right here is the security app. Something happens that the teacher needs to know about, they can push that, and it comes right up, and there's more of it scrolls down. They push that, and they get the checklist and the information. One quick short page. You don't have to go through 2,500 pages of information in the plan or try to find the right spot. It's right there, so they know what to do by taking a look at it. And we're working a few bugs out. For the most part, though, it's working fairly well, and it will be just fine, I think. I'm going to tell you, this was not our idea. I actually was contacted by the Flipchart folks who have made these flip charts forever, and they wanted to sell us one for every classroom, like they have in the past. And I said, well, we've got these iPads. Do you have an app for that? Well, yes, we do. And if you buy X number of the flip charts, we'll let you buy the app for another $5,000. And I thought, that's a really cool app. But I went to our IT folks and I said, could we reconstruct this? They said, yeah, it's not really an app, it's a website because it takes your data. And we could make it look like an app, but it's really a website, just like theirs would be. And we put it together for no cost to the district. And we're able to put this part together. Please. Now let's talk about the high schools. We think this is a secure building. We have a high school principal right here. This is not a secure building, is it, Steve? It's a tent. It's a tent because it has so many doors, so many ways out. They have over 45 doors, and every one of our high schools has at least 45 doors. And the reason for that, again, goes back to fire. They're not meant to come in, they're meant to go out. In a fire, it's meant to eliminate people from a building just as fast as you possibly can. But unlike the elementary schools, the high schools, and to a certain extent the middle school, have no compulsion to propping that door open. And we spend a tremendous amount of time and resource trying to find the open doors and close them. And why is that important? A lot of bad things go through those open doors. If you want to talk about how the two in Columbine got all that equipment and all of the bombs and the guns in, they came through prop doors the day before and hid them in the school. When you have prop doors, the doors that could be opened, we don't have a huge gang problem right now, but the limited amount of gang problems we do have, if there was something serious enough, could walk right in through the back prop door, find the individual that they wanted to find, and create violence. We have narcotics every day go in and out the doors of this school, and every other high school we have. Sales take place because somebody goes through a prop door, gets to their car where they've got it stashed, and bring it back in. There's not any way to stop that right now. It's not horrible, it's not terrible, it's not an epidemic, but it happens. So how do we secure the perimeter? Remember, I told you from step one, the most important thing we can do from a security standpoint is establish and secure the perimeter. What we're looking to do is put in a new camera system, a new pass card system, and alarms at every single door in the high schools. And when those doors are open and left propped open, it will notify the control center that we want to build in every single high school. Will be staffed by a campus security officer who will watch for open doors, and when the open doors pop up and they say we've got number 53 that's open, they can pull up a camera and see what's coming in or out of that door. And if it's already come in or it's already gone out, they can go back to that camera and they can pull up the legacy information and see who it was that propped the door and what they were doing. And they can dispatch the officer or the SRO in the school to that door to not only close it, but interdict it. And we will be able to go back and discipline the people, staff or student, who's propping up those doors and maintain a better control of those doors. This will also function as our, and I love the word pinch point. It means a whole lot different thing to us than it does your first graders. But this is a controlled access entry point. So when you go into the high school, you will go into an area right past this control station where they will vet you with the same equipment, the Raptor system, like they would in an elementary school, and then know where you're going in that area and can see where you're going once you're inside. Again, this is not a jail. This is what you would expect if you walked into Sprint. We're already to the point where we have, in fact, this week we have hired 4 of the 5 that we're going to need, and we have those people coming on board within the next couple of months, and they will be ready there to staff the facility when it's built at that point in time. We're moving them in now because they're helping us control those hallways and the people who are coming in. Up until now, we've had to have teachers do that. It is a lot more expensive to have teachers do it than the campus security officer, and the most important part is it allows everybody to put the teachers and the instructors back where they need to be, and that's in the classroom, working there as opposed to watching the hallway. And it gives us a much better capability and goes from there. So basically speaking, that's what we're looking to do. Again, you can tell I love movie lines. We're at the point where we have to fund it. And it's like the right stuff. No bucks, no Buck Rogers. All the things that we can do are extremely important, but we will either fund it through the bond issue which we have proposed and the recommendations I've made to the superintendent and the recommendations he's made to the board, and they've decided to put this bond issue to the public to allow them, all of you, to decide what direction we want to go. If we go through that direction, we will make these security changes, pretty much all the ones we've talked about, within the summer, up and ready to go. If we fund it a different way over a period of time, it'll take us 4, 5, 6 years probably to get all the changes made. Now, we make recommendations. In the end, you all will make decisions and see how it goes. So that's where we're at, and that's pretty much concludes the briefing, but I would love to answer your questions or find out what you would like to know more about and answer and talk about that. I appreciate you coming out tonight. Thank you very much.